Well, a couple years ago, I started messing around on Facebook, and I read a lot of poetry. Naturally, I'm going to get a PhD in English. I better. And I taught poetry for like 10, 12, 15 years. It all runs together. But anyway, it's good to get back here to Sylva. And when I was living over here, I learned to enjoy your very hospitable mountain town and city lights. And I come over here like once a month, Pet Cedric. So now, have I settled in? I'm not completely a foreigner. Am I accepted?
Yes.
Welcome back.
Well, that Civil War unpleasantness, has some rough heart feelings. We'll move on. So I started writing a poem a day just to see if I could do it a couple months ago, and my ideas come up like 50, and I'm very near that now. And so I decided it's time to start sharing. I get some feedback from my Facebook friends, but it's good to have flesh and blood friends too. All right. The idea was I'm writing a cycle of what I call weather poems, because as a kid I was very interested in, well, let's just be honest, obsessed with weather. I am currently a weather geek, and I post on Twitter and Facebook my forecast, which is usually wildly off base, but still it's a lot of fun. So the idea is I'm going to have 50 weather poems, and the tentative title is going to be Weather Poems Both Foul and Fair, or something like that. Okay.
Oh, Fanny Macbeth.
So I'll embed 2 or 3 of those in the middle, see how it goes, sort of sandwich them, pieces of rye bread between the whatever. Is just poems that not strictly in the weather vein. Ooh, that's a terrible, I'm sorry. I have a PhD, you're not supposed to groan when I do that. Okay. So here's the first one, and some of them have titles and some don't. I'm still working on it. This is called Trotting Fox. This is based on a real incident I had as a child. I've always liked to get out and roam the woods, and I have to tell you what a pleasure it is to look up and see the plots up here and Double Top. I saw Double Top drive it in, so they feel like old friends, much better than a Facebook friend. So here's the first one. Trotting Fox. The trotting fox ran through my mind again last night, head down, driven by senses I can't even imagine. The same ragged apparition that's been running through my dreams for 40 years now, sending the same shiver of recognition rippling through me on restless nights, made even more unsettling by the deep knowledge buried in my flickering consciousness that it shouldn't be there. Driven by urgent impulses at the wrong time of day during the wrong season, through the same hilltop forest remnant that escaped the axes and bulldozers tearing down trees for miles around in all directions year after year, until this one last remnant of the wilderness that once sprawled 1,000 miles in all directions, it once eternal and ephemeral, remained, much like my own persistent consciousness knits together generations of ancestors and descendants who would never know me, nor care whether my fleeting awareness ever animated a trotting fox, tracking down its prey or outrunning the memory of a pack of stray dogs, real or imagined, under a rustling green canopy of oak and hickory leaves that had spent 50 million years adapting to the microclimate on this one rocky hilltop, or a handful of nuts and acorns had randomly bounced into wrinkles and declivities in the tenuous, uncertain soil covering the rocks. Yet again, the image of the fox unravels, escaping my field of vision, swinging outward like the window of Hopkins or the falcon of Yeats, or even the swooping eagle from Coleridge's Fragment, and I wait to the same jolting recognition that the fox will always be on the run. So that's poem 1. Now I'm going to read a couple of the ones from the weather cycle, I call it. And this one is based on an old saying. My mom grew up in the country of Anderson County on a farm just north of Knoxville. And I've tried to record some of her folk wisdom. Anyone ever heard of calling a frost a young snow? No? Okay. Maybe. Well, that's just East Tennessee folklore, and I guess it was contained on that side of the Smokies. But anyway, this is the basis of the poem, and I'm still on new to this mode. Oh, here it is. Okay. This doesn't have a title yet, but it's based on that just one little stray remark, bit of folk wisdom, my mom said once. Back in the hollers, elderly aunts look out from whitened fields, bathed in wispy, swirling mist on midwinter days, just as the pallid sun slips over skeletal trees up on the ridge, and declare, looks like a young snow this morning. But only for the first 30 or 40 frosts. After that, such a proclamation tends toward redundancy. since even the remarkable sight of a field covered in ice crystals stops being remarkable after enough repetition. Unworthy of commemorating with a bit of folk wisdom. The answer probably right. Well, note to self, don't put hard words into your poems. Okay, but a simulacrum of something is rarely as satisfying as a thing itself, even as it glitters along the meandering rill of steaming ice water, declining to freeze under the strengthening sun, leaving unanswered the unspoken question of when the snow that looks like a heavy frost will finally put an end to the endless speculation as to when winter will turn into more than a promise. Okay, that's weather poem number 1. Now, I'll read you this weather poem number 2 about the frogs. Y'all know what well, you hear spring peepers over here too, don't you? The early frogs come out and peep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's based on that. That always struck me, and it's the sort of thing I notice, and I say, well, spring is coming. And of course, like the local weather these days, the way things have changed, you never know when they'll come out. If you notice, they seem to be coming out earlier and earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we've spent them over there. And let's see. It appears I've accidentally erased my frog poem. Well, stuff happens, but I'm still new to this. So I'll just look for the frog poem here later and read, oh dear. This is my worst nightmare when my poems disappear. But, how much time do I have left? A couple more poems?
About a minute.
Okay. Well, I'll look up the frog poem later and see what I can come up with. I'll just close. These are all still under development, I'll close with the one I wrote this morning. Say I'm trying to write these as rapidly as I can.
Yeah.
One thing I was interested in besides meteorology as a kid was astronomy, so I learned a lot of astronomy stuff. And what I'm trying to do with my poetry is kind of combine, literary matters like poetry, with science. And so this is an example of that I'll leave you with tonight. This is called perihelion passage. That is the term for when a comet makes its closest approach to the sun. Orbiting around small knots of people adhering to each other and their loose associations, clinging together to ward off loneliness. And the awful truth they've been fighting time out of mind is a mere way to circle your way through the day, almost as tenuous as the vast ellipse of a long-period comet, in its far-flung orbit beyond remote Pluto, with its atmosphere frozen into rocks harder than granite, impervious to the feeble warmth of a distant sun that is barely a sun at all that flickers so faintly. But that's not even the hard part. At the unimaginable distance of the extreme edge of the observable solar system, scarcely feeling the tug of gravity from the pitiful sun, the comet is at least stable, with its water ice so cold that molecules barely move. But as it heedlessly hurtles toward the beckoning sun, in a desperate attempt to gain enough warmth to initiate melting, it will never make it to the flickering star itself. Instead, being whipped around to the same perihelion passage it has traveled thousands of times before. Still millions of miles from its gravitational master, just close enough to feel faint stirrings of warmth, but no closer. Unless, of course, when the angle of approach is too steep, and the comet becomes a sun grazer, drawn into the object of its desire, right through and beyond its customary safe passage. In a final catastrophe that both fulfills it and destroys it, in a paroxysm that might seem tragic to the comet if it had a heart, which it doesn't, but is of no significance at all to the sun if it had a mind, which it couldn't, burning so fiercely while the trillion other comets mill about indifferently, still safely frozen in the absolute zero of comforting cold, paying no more attention to the destruction of the latest misguided comet, making the mistake of heeding the siren song of the promise of warmth that the indifferent peasants in Bruegel's famous painting, who continue their archaic labors, absorbed in who knows what, heedless of the unfolding tragedy of Icarus plunging into the sea, after making the cardinal sin of pursuing too fiercely the fulfillment of his otherwise noble desires. Thank you.